Hello! So here we are, a second rendition of this video. It had been made known to me by a friend who was watching the video when I first released this morning that there was a technical issue with the video at the end of this presentation where it had restarted on me, and I didn't see that when I was recording because on my end I saw the full video. But on the recording end, it restarted and I was like talking about the full video, but then you weren't seeing the full video. So for the four of you who had watched this prior to me me being notified of this, I'm deeply sorry. But if you would forgive my technical issues, I was really trying to smash out a lot of editing that day, and I failed to rewatch the whole video and make sure it was clean. So this is a additional slide that I put into the beginning, and you will see the redone version towards the end. And yes, I will preview this to make sure that I did this correctly this next time. So thank you for your patience, and please enjoy the video. Hello, and welcome back to Classical Fundamentals with Uplift Devcoin. My name is Dara Lewis, and today we're going to be going over forward down as far as groundwork goes. Introducing this in groundwork is essential because it is far better and far faster to just show the horse what to do, show the horse how this benefits them, and then get them to learn the cue for forward down, and then you can do it during riding. This is more beneficial because typically forward down is only practice at the trot, mostly. I mean, free walk could be considered a forward down, but it's it's mostly practice at the trot and mostly like kind of coaxed in there after trying to get the horse to guess what you're trying to get them to do, or forced down with some sort of device, and then that you don't really have the entire body movement at that point. But this is, like I said, this has been very beneficial, and it is faster. Believe me, it's faster to teach it this way. But let's get going through our slides. And I do have a video at the end of this, so please stay till the end, stick it out, and we're going to learn a little bit about this forward down stuff. All right, so first, what is forward down? Good question. Forward down is the act of stretching the neck and head down and in front of the vertical. This is important because LDR is low, deep round, and that is not forward down. That's when the horse's neck goes down and then it's behind the vertical. Even just a little bit behind the vertical, it's still not good. Because this causes the brachiocephalic muscle, which is the underside of the neck, to constrict. It constricts the horse's breathing, it constricts the horse's back movement, and cuts off the horse's nuchal ligament. And I mean, not physically cuts off the nuchal ligament, but it starts to break the nuchal ligament function from the neck and head and the back, like the entire back of the horse. And then what it will do is it'll cause the horse's pelvis to kind of stick out, and like the bum just sticks up a little bit too much, and it disengages the entire horse's top line. So you'll see low, deep, round, so you'll see kind of a bump at the back of the horse where the rump is, instead of a nice round slope. And you'll notice that the horse is not actually using their back properly, even though their head looks down and it kind of looks correct. You'll see a lot of this happening in the show ring when it comes to stretching trot. And I do mention this in my reviews, my test reviews, where people get the stretching trot wrong when they use LDR, because the horse is used to going down in LDR, So therefore, they're going to do their stretching trot in LDR. And then you'll get some points taken off if you have a good judge. So forward down is the way to go with this sort of thing. It relieves the short muscles of the back and uses the long muscles and nuchal ligament to carry. This is extremely important because this will retrain the horse from using, some random short muscles to carry itself, because in natural balance, the horse isn't balancing in order to carry a rider. The horse is balancing to carry itself in whatever play or movement that they have out in the field. So for them, it's okay. I mean, some of them have better posture than others, just like some of us people have better posture than others, which may or may not do well for them in their future if left outside. You don't necessarily see this in wild horses because wild horses have a much more diverse land area to go over, so they have to use their back for some of it. So that's why they all seem to be in pretty okay condition. And then of course the stallions, they fight, so they use all of those muscles. But we're not going to talk about that right now. But using the long muscles and the nuchal ligament first as a reference to go back to all the time, or constantly go back to, is very good, because that means the horse is engaging their back properly. So if you bring the horse up into, say, a working trot, they are at a more correct working trot using the correct muscles, because you started with that forward down stretch of the long muscles. Because a working trot is the horse working the short muscles that will ultimately carry them into collection later, but it's working those muscles. It's not necessarily full collection, but it's a little bit of collection. So if you start off with the long muscles and then gradually work towards the short muscles, that's where you can get a nice, diverse education for the horse, and correct education where they are actually carrying you properly. It also stretches the lamellar part of the nuchal ligament, which helps realign the fascia. So I don't know if anyone has done any research on fascia. I'm sure body workers have, and of course veterinarians, and of course those horse geeks out there like myself. But fascia is extremely important. It's in all bodies. It's that kind of sticky, clear substance that you kind of pull off like a chicken breast if you're preparing chicken, and it's kind of this weird kind of thin stuff. It's thicker in some areas of the body and thinner in other areas of the body. But what happens with fascia is, if it is bunched up with tight muscles underneath of it and shortened all the time without the ability to lengthen it out and stretch, it creates this short, sticky net of fascia to try to stabilize the muscle. And the horse now, after a while, has a harder time stretching out. That's why if you were to take an LDR horse or a roll cur horse, it would take maybe a year to 18-month amount of time and constant correct work to lengthen that horse's body out again, because all that fascia is bunched up and sticking together in itself, and it's no longer aligned nicely like a muscle would be. But with stretching and movement, dynamic movement, this fascia realigns itself. So the stretching or forward down helps realign that fascia. And now the lamellar part of the nuchal ligament, so the nuchal ligament goes from the pole all the way down through the tail. And it's one of the longest ligaments in their body. And the lamellar portion of it is the part on the top of the horse's neck that helps hold the neck up with its tone, And then when the horse stretches forward down, it kind of helps stretch and realign that muscle and that fascia in the back of their neck, which is ultimately their top line. So that's one of the reasons why when you work in forward down more and more, you'll see that their neck will fill out from, between their poll and their wither. And their wither, if you have a shark-finned wither, it becomes less and less pronounced as that muscle and fascia start to stretch and realign and grow over that part. So that's one of the reasons why if you see a horse that is nicely rounded like that, you kind of can tell whether or not they are being trained with one method or another. Same thing with horses that have a noticeable dip between, the front of their neck and their wither, or they're considered shark-finned withers. So you can tell. It requires the horse to engage its abdominals to balance properly. So in order for the horse to stretch forward down, especially in movement, the horse's abs have to tighten and stabilize its back. And this is a natural thing. The back comes up, abdominals squeeze. It's more pronounced in some horses than others, depending on their fitness level. So if they have a big fitness level, you'll see a big, difference between if they have a hay belly and they're just kind of dropped, or if they are engaging those muscles and they are really using them to hold themselves up. The stronger the horse's abs get, the more pronounced that change is when they're working. Of course, every horse can have a hay belly, and that kind of stretches out their ribs, but that is not quite what we're talking about. But that is another thing that is another reason why we want to use the forward down as a reference for all of the other gait variations, because the horse is not only stretching with its long muscles, it is also engaging its abs. And in order for collection to be true, the long muscles have to engage, the short muscles have to engage with them, but the abs also have to hold up and stabilize the body. If you work in a way where the horse's head's being forced down and the back's not working properly, the abs aren't even engaged half the time. So, you can see this in a horse where you'll see a noticeable belly and a dip in the horse's back when the rider is going through a test or whatever it is. And if you notice that noticeable kind of beer gut that a horse might have, you'll know that they're not engaging their abs properly. So this should be used to ready the horse for all other gait variations. Like I've been kind of talking about through this entire time, this is a reference to start from, and then you can go either more extended with more push or more collected with more push up. So extended means more push forward, and collected means more push forward and up, or even just up. So when you do something more collected, you start with the forward down, you go with your half halts, the horse will raise its head naturally, you collect your reins through your little half halts. The reins should have 2 ounces of pressure. Not any more than that. Like, that's all it takes. It's 2 ounces of pressure. And honestly, the horse is putting the pressure into your hands. And I know this is kind of going into riding and we're talking about groundwork, but the horse should be putting pressure into your hand, not you taking pressure onto the horse's face. Because the pressure in your hand that the horse is kind of moving into is the same pressure that if you were to let the reins go nice and gradually, the horse will stretch back down into forward down. You want this all the time. You don't want no contact, you want 2 ounces of contact. If the horse has more than 2 ounces of contact, there's a balance issue, so you have to go back and address that. But you start collecting the contact, and if you want the horse to shorten its steps and go more upward, then that's when you shorten your movement, and the horse should be able to follow you into that as you collect the reins and the horse's head comes up. When it comes to more extended or lengthened gaits, you start with your forward down and you ask for more expressive movement with your seat. So your seat tells the horse to move out more, and then you collect the reins because the horse can't have its head so far down and move out at the same time. The horse has to create some sort of push. So the horse's head will come up until the neck is somewhat level. And once you have that, they will be able to push much better, much more effectively with their hind end. And then you start going into lengthening. And then if you collect the horse more but still ask for the push, and this goes into what you're supposed to do with your seat, which we'll talk about later, that's when you get into your medium extended gaits, because the horse is collecting, going somewhat up, but more pushing forward. And that's why when you're looking at advanced dressage, you need to show dynamic movement of the head too. Because without dynamic movement of the head, then you don't have a true extension. You just have fancy leg movement. By the way, I have my coffee with me, with my Iceland cup. But and that's why I kind of criticize a lot of these upper level riders, that they go around this entire test when the horse's head is just stuck in the same place, unless they're maybe doing a free walk or an extended walk, which an extended walk cannot be shown extended unless you extend the head. But for some reason, they have managed to make the leg movement so exaggerated during the extended trot that it kind of turns into something that's okay later. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just the flip of mentality in the judges when you get to a certain level, which should not exist, but that's, neither here nor there right now. So, how do you perform this? First, the head must remain straight up and down or slightly in front of the vertical. If the horse's brachiocephalic is too tight to be in front of the vertical and is instead on the vertical, that's still okay. Ideally, you want to have it in front of the vertical. Sometimes, even with the best trained horses in the horse, like I will give you an example of my own horse. He had like a year and a half worth of dental issues, and I had the veterinarian look at him over and over and over again, and like he had 2 floats within one whole year, and it still didn't fix him. And he's just giving me like a face that it was just like his teeth were bothering him. But I didn't know what else to do, because I'm like, I already had the vet out here twice to float the teeth. I don't want to like grind this poor horse's teeth down to oblivion. But I had recently met a veterinarian that specialized in teeth. So I'm like, okay, maybe a specialist can look at them. And she did, and found out that there was very little movement going to one side, which was contributing to him developing a one-sidedness that I didn't know why, because like it's not the training process. The training process has remained the same, and he was very even in the beginning of his life, but as he turned 5 and now 5.5 and coming on 6, he started getting very tense and tight and not being able to bend in the one direction. When we found out the problem with his teeth, we found out why. Once his teeth were fixed, he started to gradually loosen back up, but it was that brachiocephalic and pull and TMJ muscle that was super tight. He was actually grinding his teeth because his teeth weren't functioning properly, essentially. So now I have to go back and help loosen up that brachiocephalic, the chest muscles, and the pull and TMJ to get him to relax so he can do it true forward down again. Because he was dipping behind the vertical when he was going into forward down, kind of like an LDR horse, which was, I didn't want that to happen, but quite interesting when it came to learning things. And now I have an actual process to mitigate that and rehab from that, thankfully, so that I can better advise my clients when they have a horse like that as well. But The head must remain straight up and down or on the vertical. Apply light pressure on the poll or noseband of the cavesson. So noseband, if the horse's head tends to follow the cavesson pretty well, the noseband is a good idea. If you find yourself putting too much pressure on the nose, pulling on the bottom of the nose chase strap or the bottom of a rope halter so that you have direct pressure on the pole also helps. Or you can just put your hand on top of their pole and try to get them to lower their head, which that is seen in the foundations, so that as part of their foundation, they should be able to lower their head on command to at least tack up. So you need to apply the light pressure so that they can bring their head down. If needed, if they are just not getting it, and you don't want to apply too much pressure, so no more than a pound of pressure, you can use a reward to coax their head down. So you use the pressure first, then you use the reward to coax the head down. Don't give them the reward until their head comes down. With Revan's tightness in his brachiocephalic, and he created a habit of dipping his head behind the vertical, I could not correct that with just direct pressure. I corrected that with having his nose follow a reward, which helped him immensely. So now when I put the pressure down without a reward, he will go straight down. That's how the R plus R negative works, where you start with some light pressure, you use R plus to get them into it, and then when it goes from external gratification from the reward to internal gratification because it makes them feel good, that's where you take the reward away and becomes R negative. It's fun how that works. So repeat this exercise until they get it, until you only use 2 ounces of contact to bring the horse's head down. You will need this in the future because as the horse moves forward, because, ideally you want to start this at the halt so that they get it. You want to isolate it to the only movement that they're doing. And then when you add movement, they already know what you're doing when you ask them to bring their head down. So that's where you start leading them forward with their head down to train them at the walk. This will seem kind of pointless, because a lot of them do it so easily, because a lot of them, if they're out in the field and they're foraging a lot, they're used to doing this, so they have the muscles to do it, and they don't really need to engage their core too much to keep at a walk and bring their head down. But it's the concept that you're trying to teach the horse. With the pressure, you bring their head down at the walk, at the halt, and then eventually at the trot and canter. So the exercise that will be shown is you bring the horse's head down for a few strides, you walk with the horse's head down, and then you bring him back up to hip height, you walk around a little bit like that, and then you bring the horse's head down again. For the trot and canter, training on the lunge is extremely useful, so you don't have to keep jogging next to them with your, body bent over. It's quite much more ergonomic for the human if you use it on the lunge. And for the lunge, and this is after they kind of got this, so on the lunge, you use a capture technique. So in R+, there's this thing called capture. When the animal starts doing or getting close to doing the thing that you kind of want them to do, you stop immediately, you reward them, you've captured that behavior. And then they'll have more incentive to do it over and over again. And then they'll start offering it because it gets them what they need to do. And then once it starts becoming, intrinsic instead of extrinsic, where they'll start feeling good because it feels good to do that, that's when you don't have to really reward them anymore, because they're already getting their reward with extrinsic motivation. But yes, that's what, and that'll be seen in the video as well, where once the horse lowers their head a little bit, you stop, you reward, and then you try again. Ideally you want to go switch directions so that the horse sees it as a completely different thing. And then the horse will eventually think, okay, when we lunge, we go into forward down. So that's how you teach it without using any gadgets or or gimmicks or anything like that. You're not forcing the horse into a frame. They are going into the frame by themselves because they are seeking an extrinsic or intrinsic reward from doing that behavior. Continue to train this movement in order to train for riding. So this is beneficial even if you're not going to be riding the horse. So like if the horse is older and you're just doing this to kind of help with their body condition, or if they're going to be long line only because you're not interested in riding, which people exist that do that, or if you're just interested in driving, this is still extremely important because in order for the horse to really pull, they have to learn how to push. So because they're really pushing into that chest. The harness, just chest harness. And if they start pushing from their hind end, they will be a healthier driving horse in the long run. So I would do this with any horse, any size of horse, pony, miniature horse, large horse, giraffe, doesn't matter. This is beneficial for all horses because they all have basically the same anatomy. But this prepares them to ride because as a rider, you want them to carry you with their long muscles as the first frame of reference. So to automatically get them into this forward down position, it becomes normal. And then, once you start riding, ideally when you're doing your riding in, you'd be on the lunge. And since they're so used to this on the lunge, then they go into it automatically. And then you just reward them because they're doing it right. Once they discover this, they actually, I have seen this click in so many horses' brains. It's ridiculous. This is magical. There's a light bulb moment that they will have, and to think it's easier to carry the human this way. I'm just going to continue to do this. And that's why we want it as a frame of reference, because once that light bulb moment has happened, the horse will always use its body this way. It's one of those magical things. I love it. Here is the video. I will restart it. So this is the beginning of lowering the head. On this day last summer, he was a bit stiff, so he was kind of showing some behavior of a stiff neck, and so it gave me the opportunity to show what could happen when a horse doesn't quite understand what you're asking. So what you want to do is put pressure on the nose and even the nose strap until they lower their head and then immediately release. So I am releasing when he does lower his head. I'm asking him to lower his head even further, but this is a good beginning reference point if you've never taught your horse to really lower their head properly before. This next one is completing the head down. So this was just last week, and you can see how he's dipping behind the vertical. This was a development of a bad habit due to a tightness in the brachiocephalic region and TMJ region due to a tooth problem that is now resolved. So now I am trying to resolve the bad habit of dipping behind the vertical for this. I'm using treats or rewards to help lead his nose in the correct direction because pressure on the cavesson alone is not going to do it. It will just lead him forward due to that stiffness issue. So moving forward with this, so literally moving forward, when you are leading, you need, and this is after it's established at the halt, you want to lead their head down whilst moving forward, and then bring their head back up again, and give them a break, and lead it back down. This is actually a good balance exercise, especially for horses that are being rehabbed. So, and this is the precursor to the forward down at the trot. Now, you wouldn't want to do this while leading at the trot because then you're jogging forward and bending down, and that's a trip hazard. But it's a good start to get the horse to start moving in that direction. Now you want to do this leading both directions on both sides of the horse because the horse does curve itself around you a little bit on the side that you're leading. So if you want to be even and straight, you need to practice on both sides and practice leading on the off side as well. I like leading on the inside so that I'm not caught between the fence and the horse if he decides to spook or move into my space. And then you can start on a short lunge, and you can start at the walk on the short lunge. Generally, they'll understand, but what you want to do is use this technique called capture. So when the horse does lower their head, and I'm not capturing this right now because he understands this, but when the horse does lower their head, you stop, you bring them in, you reward them, and then you change the direction, and you keep repeating that until they kind of understand. And you can do this in several different sessions as well. Now, once the horse understands the walk and is balanced at the walk and forward down, you can pick this up and start doing this at the trot. And this is where leading with energy comes in, so that you can kind of send them forward with energy. I don't need to put out as much energy now since he understands the assignment, but I'm not going to lunge him like this for 20 minutes. I will lunge him just to see where he's at, to see if he's moving well and not moving stiffly. So if he can go into forward down nicely, then I know that he is balanced that day and he's feeling pretty good. And then you can start doing this in hand, and this is where you start teaching the horse to move into contact. Whether you've got a bit or bitless, you want to start doing little half halts, and the horse can start experimenting with what you want. And even if they're looking in a different direction, if they move their head down, you reward them. Eventually, you can work them into where they are going down straight, and you can see he gets it, he understands the assignment, and he's bringing his head down on his own now. I'm still rewarding him because he clearly understands the assignment, but before I completely end it, I will add the rein pressure and see that he moves into it. And this prepares them for when you're riding so that they will continually move into rein pressure. And I'm talking about 2 ounces of rein pressure, not pounds. So this creates a light contact. And this will help you later on in your riding when you start getting the variations of each gait. So this was last summer, and I want to demonstrate what happens when the horse is a little imbalanced. So he brings his head up, brings his head down. So he knows the assignment, but either he gets his attention brought somewhere else or he loses balance. He's kind of losing balance a little bit because he is on a slope. And this is something good to train to see if you can get them into forward down, an active forward down. And here I'm trying to get him into a canter. So you can still practice forward down, and then you can get them to canter and see if they can balance enough at their canter without losing impulsion. And you can see that when he tried to go into canter and forward down, he lost impulsion and went back down to a trot. Now, I'm okay with this because I wanted to see a moment of forward down. And we'll get him back into it. Loses a little bit of impulsion. But here, he's a bit more balanced going this direction. And you can see he can perform forward down at the canter on the slope just fine going this direction. So this indicates to me that there is some sort of imbalance from side to side, or maybe even a lameness on the one side where he is having trouble. And this is a nice way to indicate whether to find out whether or not the horse has an issue going one lead or the other, and then try to break that down and figure out what to do about it. So that was forward down. You can do it at all three gaits. You can do it on the lunge. Please, I do encourage you to do this on the lunge before you do it in riding, because they need to be able to balance themselves before they start balancing you. And they need to be able to do this sustainably before you get on, because they're going to have the extra challenge of balancing you. And so they're going to kind of go backwards in their training a little bit until they have that those muscles to be able to balance you properly, because they're engaging their core quite a bit when they do the forward down, and that's why they will pop their head back up, because they will release their core and drop their sling, even the slightest, more slightly drop their sling, and then they'll bring their head back down if they understand the assignment. So it'll be kind of like head up, head down, head up, head down for a while until they can really build those muscles properly. So if the horse on the lunge is still in the head up, head down process, I would discourage you from riding in that gait. If the horse is nice, fluid, head down, no problem, then you can ride that gait cleanly. So now, so say with Revan right now, during this time, he's no longer head up, head down with the trot. He's still kind of doing that at the canter. So he is ready for the trot. That's why we're working in trot. You can see that in our bitless horse videos. And that's why, even though he probably thinks that he can do the canter, I am hesitant to ask for it, because he is still imbalanced on the lunge line at the canter. So he'll have more trouble than he realizes with me on his back. So that was forward down. Thank you for watching. And thank you for watching a second time with this new edit. All right, I hope you have a wonderful day. And patrons, I do appreciate your support. If you want to become a patron, check us out on Patreon. If you want to become a member at YouTube, I also encourage that. You will have the same videos available with each level of support, but Patreon has is the only place with Revan's team videos, which and perks as well. You get a few more perks when you sign up with Patreon on that level, and one of those perks is having a one-on-one with me once a month. So I hope you will, and please be kind.